Junior Scout Vara Thrix of the Vexen Federation had exactly 3 cycles left before retirement. 3 cycles of peaceful patrols through empty sectors, scanning dead rocks and filing reports nobody would read. 3 cycles before she could return home, collect her pension, and never look at the black void of space again. Of course, the universe had other plans. Her scout ship's proximity alarm screamed to life as she dropped out of warp near an unremarkable yellow star. Vara's 4 eyes went wide. No. She frantically checked her navigation logs. This sector is supposed to be empty. But it wasn't empty. Not even close. The 3rd planet from the star was teeming with electromagnetic signals, radio waves, digital transmissions, and something that made her heart skip several beats, nuclear signatures. Lots of them. "Oh, ancestors preserve me," Vara whispered, her blue skin paling to almost white. "It's a pre-FTL civilization? A nuclear-armed pre-FTL civilization." She knew the protocols. First contact situations were supposed to be handled by trained diplomats with decades of experience and very large support fleets. Junior scouts who accidentally stumbled into restricted zones were supposed to leave immediately, file a report, and let someone else deal with the mess. But Vara's curiosity, a trait her instructors had always warned would get her killed, wouldn't let her leave. Not yet. She enabled her ship's stealth systems and moved closer, passive sensors drinking in every detail. The planet was called Earth according to their own transmissions. The dominant species called themselves humans, though they seem to have thousands of different names for themselves depending on which part of the planet they occupied. Vara watched in fascination as she compiled her observations. The humans had barely left their own planetary system. Their space stations were crude, their satellites primitive. They still used chemical rockets for the love of the void. They were decades, maybe centuries, from developing proper faster-than-light travel. And yet, something about them made the veteran scouts' instincts scream warnings. They had 17,000 satellites in orbit. Their planet was wrapped in a shell of metal and electronics so dense it looked like a second planetary ring. They had multiple space stations not just for research but for tourism. Tourism. They shot themselves into space for fun. "Insane," Vara muttered, zooming in on a transmission. "These beings are absolutely insane." She watched as a human strapped themselves to what was essentially a controlled explosion and launched into the upper atmosphere, screaming with what the translation matrix identified as joy. Another human was broadcasting themselves eating something called hot wings in zero gravity, while thousands of others watched and sent encouraging messages. "They're doing stupid things in space for entertainment," Vara said to her empty ship. "They haven't even mastered basic gravity manipulation. And they're already treating the cosmic void like a playground." Then her scanners picked up something that made her blood run cold. Military installations, hundreds of them. And not just on the planet's surface, in orbit too. Her computer struggled to classify what she was seeing. Some of the satellites weren't satellites at all. They were weapons platforms disguised as communications equipment. Kinetic weapons. Directed energy systems. And something her scanner labeled, "Unknown Weapon System. Recommend extreme caution." Vara's primary hands trembled as she typed up her report. Her secondary hands reached for the emergency beacon. This was bigger than her. Much bigger. "Attention Federation Command," she spoke into the recorder, her voice shaking. "This is Junior Scout Vara Thrix, registration code VT7749. I have discovered an unclassified pre-FTL civilization at coordinates 001843. Species designation, human. Homeworld designation, Earth." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Command, these beings are unusual. They possess nuclear weapons but broadcast their locations openly. They can't leave their solar system, yet they've militarized their orbital space. They have no formal government structure that I can identify, yet they coordinate global projects. They're fractured into hundreds of competing nations, yet they cooperate on space ventures." Another alarm chirped. One of their satellites had just adjusted its orbit, pointed directly at her position. Impossible. Her stealth systems were military grade. Nothing pre-FTL could possibly. "Unknown vessel in Earth orbit, this is Houston Space Command. We can see you. Please identify yourself, or we will consider you a hostile contact. You have 60 seconds to comply." Vara's third heart stopped entirely. They could see her, through full military-grade stealth systems, with their primitive sensors. Command, Vara said, her voice barely a whisper now. I'm updating my initial report. These humans, they're not what they appear to be. They're either far more advanced than their technology suggests, or they're naturally gifted at warfare, possibly both. The communication channel crackled again. 45 seconds, unknown vessel. We're having a really good day so far, and we'd like to keep it that way. Please don't make us do paperwork. Paperwork? They were threatening her with paperwork? Vara made a decision that would change galactic history. She dropped her stealth systems and opened a communication channel, broadcasting in standard Federation greeting protocol. This is Junior Scout Vera Thrix of the Vexen Federation. I come in peace. I apologize for the intrusion. This was an accident. I mean no harm to your world or your species. There was a long pause. Then a human voice responded, sounding almost bored. Oh, thank God. We've been taking bets on when you guys would show up. Please proceed to Orbital Corridor 7 and stand by. Someone from the UN will be up to talk to you in like 4 to 6 hours. Do you guys drink coffee? Vara stared at her communication panel in complete confusion. They'd been expecting first contact? Yes? I can consume most liquid nutrients. Great. Someone will bring you a thermos. Welcome to Earth, little blue dude. Try not to crash into anything. Our insurance rates are already ridiculous. The channel closed. Vara sat in her pilot's chair, all 4 of her eyes wide with shock. Her report to Federation Command completely forgotten. She had just made first contact with an alien species, and they had offered her coffee. What in the name of the void had she just gotten herself into? Galactic diplomat Zephyros Caney was not having a good day. First, his morning meditation had been interrupted by an emergency summons from the High Council. Second, his breakfast had been completely ruined because apparently pre-FTL civilizations couldn't be bothered to stay pre-FTL anymore. And third, most annoyingly, he now had to visit a backwater planet called Earth to explain to some primitive apes why they couldn't just detect cloaked Federation vessels whenever they felt like it. It's a matter of protocol. Zephyros explained to his assistant as their diplomatic cruiser approached the blue-green planet. We can't have every species with radar capabilities thinking they can just pierce military-grade stealth technology. It sets a terrible precedent. His assistant, a nervous Quellan named Pix, chittered anxiously. Sir, the initial reports from Scout Thrix suggest these humans are unconventional. All pre-FTL species are unconventional. Pix, that's why we have protocols. Zephyros adjusted his formal diplomatic robes, checking his reflection in the polished wall panel. He was a Dravian, tall, elegant, with silver skin that shimmered in the light. His species had been instrumental in founding the Federation 3,000 years ago. He'd handled first contact situations with 67 different species. 67. Some jumped-up apes with chemical rockets weren't going to intimidate him. Entering Earth orbit now, sir, the pilot announced. Zephyros looked out the viewport and immediately frowned. The orbital space was a mess. Satellites everywhere, tumbling in chaotic patterns that somehow avoided collision. Space stations that looked like they'd been assembled by children with construction toys. And was that a car floating out there? Why is there a ground vehicle in orbit? He demanded. According to records, a human named Elon Musk launched his personal vehicle into space as a joke, sir, Pix explained, his translator struggling with the concept. A joke. Zephyros pinched the bridge of his nose. They're polluting their orbital space with jokes. Attention, Dravian vessel, this is Earth Space Traffic Control. Please transmit your diplomatic credentials and proceed to Docking Bay 12 at the International Space Station. Coffee and donuts will be provided. Also, please avoid the Tesla. The what? The car, sir. The floating car. Zephyros closed his eyes and counted to 10 in High Dravian. Acknowledge their instructions. Let's get this over with. 20 minutes later, Zephyros found himself floating in a cramped space station module, face-to-face with humanity's representatives. There were 5 of them, from different nations judging by their varied appearances. They wore casual clothing, not even proper diplomatic attire, and one of them was actively drinking something from a container labeled World's Okayest Diplomat. The human in the center, a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, smiled warmly. Diplomat Caney, welcome to Earth. I'm Secretary General Chen. These are representatives from our Security Council. Please have some coffee. I did not come here for refreshments, Zephyros said coldly. drawing himself up to his full height, a solid foot taller than the largest human. "I came to discuss your violations of interstellar law." Secretary General Chen's smile didn't waver. "What violations would those be?" "Your detection of Scout Thrix's vessel, unauthorized scanning of Federation technology, potential theft of classified stealth capabilities." The list goes on. One of the other humans, a man with a thick beard, laughed. "Mate, we didn't steal anything. We just pointed a few telescopes in the right direction. Your ship was blocking starlight in a pattern that didn't match any known asteroid. Basic astronomy, really." Zephyros felt his skin flush darker silver, the Dravian equivalent of turning red. "Basic astronomy does not defeat military-grade stealth systems. Does if you're not actually invisible, just hard to detect." Another human chimed in, a woman with dark skin and an amused expression. "Your stealth tech bends electromagnetic radiation around the hull, yeah? That's clever, but it doesn't account for gravitational lensing, thermal displacement, or good old-fashioned pattern recognition. You left a ship-shaped hole in the cosmic microwave background. Plus," the bearded man added, "you were parked right over Houston. We've got more satellites over that area than we have people. Something was going to notice." Zephyros stared at them in disbelief. They'd defeated technology that had taken the Federation centuries to develop, using methods that amounted to educated guessing and statistical analysis. "This is unacceptable," he said, trying to regain control of the conversation. "The Federation has rules about pre-FTL civilizations. You are not authorized to have detected us. You are certainly not authorized to have military weapons in orbit, and you are absolutely not authorized to treat this situation with such casual disrespect." The room went very quiet. Secretary General Chen set down her coffee mug. Her smile remained, but something in her eyes changed. "Diplomat Caney, let me make something very clear. We didn't ask to be contacted. We didn't ask for your Federation's rules to apply to us. And we certainly didn't ask for you to show up in our orbit and tell us what we're authorized to do in our own star system. The Federation determines what is and is not." "The Federation," Chen interrupted, her voice still pleasant but now carrying an edge like frozen steel, "can determine whatever it wants, in its own space. This is our space, our planet, our orbital volume. And unless your Federation wants to explain to its citizens why they started a war with a species that managed to spot their invisible ships with 100-year-old physics, I suggest we all take a deep breath and start this conversation over." Zephyros felt a chill run down his spine. The human's words were wrapped in diplomatic courtesy, but the threat was crystal clear. They knew they'd been detected. They knew how outmatched they were technologically, and they didn't care. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "we should discuss terms of mutual understanding." "Now you're talking," the bearded human said cheerfully. "More coffee?" An hour later, Zephyros was back on his ship, his carefully prepared speeches unused, his diplomatic superiority thoroughly dismantled. The humans had agreed to keep the detection methods quiet for now. In exchange, the Federation would recognize Earth's sovereignty over its local space and provide limited technology exchanges. It was, Zephyros had to admit, a fair deal. More than fair, considering how badly he'd underestimated them. "Sir?" Pix asked nervously. "How did the negotiations go?" "Pix," Zephyros said quietly, staring at the blue planet below. "Update the Federation database. Humanity's threat assessment needs to be revised." "To what level, sir?" Zephyros remembered the moment when Secretary General Chen's smile had hardened. The way all 5 humans had suddenly looked at him with the same predatory calculation. The casual mention of orbital weapons platforms they'd somehow developed without anyone noticing. "Level 7, he said. "Potentially dangerous. Definitely unpredictable. And whatever you do, Pix, never ever tell them something they're not authorized to do." "Why not, sir?" "Because," Zephyros said, reaching for the human beverage they'd sent him home. "With coffee, they'd called it. I'm fairly certain they'll take that as a challenge." He took a sip. It was delicious. He hated that almost as much as everything else about this situation. Warlord Krasvok the Render had conquered 43 star systems, destroyed 216 warships, and made entire civilizations tremble at the mention of his name. He commanded the largest pirate fleet in the Outer Rim, a terrifying armada of stolen military hardware and ships that had been modified for maximum destruction. So when his intelligence officer informed him that a tiny pre-FTL civilization had just been granted. Provisional Federation status. Krasvok did what any self-respecting pirate warlord would do. He laughed. Earth? Krasvok's massive form shook with amusement, his forearms gesturing wildly. They gave Federation status to a species that still uses chemical propulsion? The Council has gone soft. His second-in-command, a scarred Vrexian named Sholtok, pulled up a holographic display. My lord, the Federation has issued warnings. They've classified the humans as Level 7 threat potential. Level 7? Krasvok laughed harder. What are they going to do? Throw their primitive satellites at us. Sholtok, plot a course for Earth. If the Federation is too weak to properly subjugate a pre-FTL world, we'll do it for them. Their resources will fetch a fine price, and their warriors will make adequate slaves. Lord Krasvok, perhaps we should exercise caution. Caution is for species that need it. Krasvok roared. We are the Render Fleet. We bow to no one. Now set the course before I decide we need a new second-in-command. Sholtok wisely stopped arguing. 3 days later, Krasvok's fleet dropped out of warp at the edge of Earth's solar system. 20 warships, each one capable of glassing a planet's surface. The fleet had crushed Federation patrols, destroyed corporate mining operations, and once held an entire colony world hostage for ransom. A backwater planet with chemical rockets would fall in hours. Open a channel, Krasvok commanded. Let's see how these humans respond to a proper show of force. The communication officer worked his console, broadcasting on all Federation frequencies. Channel open, my lord. Krasvok's massive face filled the transmission, all 4 of his eyes gleaming with malicious intent. Attention, primitive species of Earth. I am Warlord Krasvok the Render, commander of the fleet that now surrounds your pathetic planet. You have one of your planetary rotations to surrender unconditionally. Refuse and we will reduce your cities to ash and take your survivors as slaves. This is your only warning. He cut the transmission and settled back into his command throne, a satisfied grin on his reptilian face. 30 seconds later, a response came through. Hi there. This is Colonel Janet Martinez, United States Space Command. Just to clarify, you're threatening to attack Earth? Like for real? This isn't some kind of prank? Krasvok blinked in confusion. The human's tone was almost conversational. This is no prank, human. This is a declaration of conquest, surrender or face annihilation. There was a pause. He could hear muffled voices in the background and what sounded like laughter. Okay, yeah, just confirming with the team here, Colonel Martinez continued. So here's the thing, Krasvok. Can I call you Kraz? We're gonna go with Kraz. Here's the thing, Kraz. You're about, 400,000 kilometers from Earth right now, which means you're well within what we call the find-out zone of our fuck-around-and-find-out defensive perimeter. What are you babbling about? Krasvok demanded. I'm saying, buddy, that you've made a mistake. But hey, everyone makes mistakes. Tell you what, you turn those ships around right now and we'll pretend this whole embarrassing situation never happened. We'll even throw in a care package, some coffee, maybe some Hot Pockets, a Blu-ray of Independence Day so you can see how this kind of thing usually works out. Krasvok's face darkened with rage. You dare mock me? I have destroyed fleets 10 times more powerful than anything your primitive world can muster. Cool. Sholtok, right? You're the second in command? Sholtok startled. How did the human know his name? Sholtok, buddy, you seem like the smart one. Want to tell your boss what's currently targeting your flagship? Sholtok checked his sensors. His face went pale. My lord, I'm reading multiple target locks, hundreds of them from everywhere. What? Krasvok roared. The satellites, my lord. They're not just satellites. They're weapons platforms. All of them. And there are. Ancestors preserve us. There are thousands of them. Colonel Martinez's voice returned, still maddeningly casual. Oh, you found our orbital defense grid? Yeah, sorry about the clutter up here. We humans have this thing where we like to build stuff. Sometimes we build space stations. Sometimes we build satellites. And sometimes, just sometimes, we build a 17,000-piece shell of kinetic kill vehicles, railguns, and directed energy weapons around our planet because we watched too many alien invasion movies and thought, yeah, we should probably prepare for that. Krasvok stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Every single satellite had adjusted its orbit. Every single one was now pointed directly at his fleet. His ships were surrounded by a cloud of weapons platforms so dense it looked like a swarm. You're bluffing, he said. but his voice lacked conviction. Those are primitive communications satellites. Some of them are. Some of them are GPS satellites, weather satellites, scientific equipment, very boring stuff. But see, here's the fun part about humans, Kraz. We're really good at multitasking. That satellite monitoring climate change also has a tungsten rod launcher. That one tracking space debris, doubled as a laser platform. We're efficient like that. This is a violation of Federation law. Krazvok shouted, so is piracy, but here we are. Now I'm gonna level with you, Kraz. My government does not want an interstellar incident. We just joined this Federation thing, and we're trying to make a good impression. So I've been authorized to give you exactly one chance to leave. Turn around, jump to wherever you came from, and we never speak of this again. And if I refuse? The Colonel's voice lost all traces of humor. Then, Warlord Krazvok the Render, you're going to learn why humanity spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war before we ever left our planet. You're going to learn why we put weapons in orbit before we put up our first space hotel. And you're going to learn that the only thing more terrifying than a species that reached for the stars is a species that reached for the stars while preparing for someone else to already be there. Krazvok looked at his tactical display. At the thousands of weapon signatures, at his ships completely surrounded, completely outmaneuvered by a species that wasn't supposed to be a threat, at the trap he'd flown directly into. Sholtok, he said quietly. Prepare for emergency jump. Yes, my lord, wait. Colonel Martinez called out. You're forgetting your care package. What? Can't have you leaving empty-handed. We're launching a pod now. It's got coffee, some snacks, and a USB drive with all of humanity's greatest war movies. Consider it educational material. A small pod launched from one of the space stations, drifting toward the pirate fleet. Krazvok, despite himself, had it retrieved. 10 minutes later, his fleet jumped away from Earth's solar system, carrying with them a story that would spread through every pirate haven, smuggler's port, and lawless station in the galaxy. The humans were not to be trifled with. Inside the pod, along with coffee and something called beef jerky, was a note written in perfect galactic standard. Thanks for visiting Earth. Sorry we couldn't be more hospitable. Next time, maybe call ahead. We're friendly, promise, as long as you're not pointing guns at our planet. P.S. Try the coffee. It's better than anything you've got out there. P.P.S. Yes, every single one of those satellites was armed. No, we're not sorry. P.P.P.S. Watch Independence Day and Ender's Game. You'll understand why we're like this. Epilogue back on Earth. Colonel Martinez closed the comm channel and turned to her team. The Situation Room erupted in cheers. Did we really have all those satellites armed? A young officer asked. Martinez grinned. About 40% of them. The rest were just regular satellites that we retasked to look threatening. Humans are really good at bluffing. And if he'd called our bluff, then the actual weapons platforms would have turned his fleet into the galaxy's most expensive fireworks display. She took a sip of her coffee. But between you and me, I'm glad he ran. Paperwork for an interstellar war would have been a nightmare. Across the galaxy, Federation databases were being updated. Earth's threat assessment was revised again. Level 9 this time. Potentially dangerous. Definitely unpredictable. Approach with extreme caution and preferably coffee. And in a small apartment in Tokyo, a human named Kenji looked up at the stars and smiled, completely unaware that his species had just announced themselves to the galaxy in the most human way possible. With sarcasm, careful preparation, and an absolutely terrifying willingness to weaponize literally everything they could get their hands on. Welcome to the galactic community, humanity. The universe would never be the same.